The alarm chimed through the celestial haven, a multi-species research station orbiting the gas giant Helios 7. Commander Sarah, a Vexalian with iridescent scales that shifted from blue to violet under stress, stood before the assembly hall reviewing her datapad. Her triple-jointed fingers tapped rhythmically against the screen as she conducted the morning roll call for the education wing. Clicks. Present. Mora, present. Zethos, present. Her voice carried the melodic undertones characteristic of her species, designed to soothe and command simultaneously. But as she reached the end of the roster, her scales rippled with concern. Pip, Nera, and Cole absent, 3 Rithian cubs missing. In her 15 cycles managing the station's youth education program, Sarah had never lost track of a single child. The Rithians were a feline-like species, barely reaching knee-height to most humanoids, with oversized eyes and ears that gave them an almost impossibly cute appearance. They were also notorious escape artists. Initiate corridor scan, Sarah commanded the station's AI. Locate cubs Pip, Nera, and Cole immediately. Scanning, the AI responded. Multiple biosignatures detected in Corridor 7 Beta. Visual confirmation required. Sarah's scales flushed deep purple, the Vexalian equivalent of a groan. Corridor 7 Beta led directly to the research quarters, including the human's habitat. She tapped her comm badge. Torin, we have a situation. 3 cubs are loose near your sector. Static crackled before a distinctly human voice responded, thick with sleep. It's 600 hours, Sarah. Don't humans get shore leave on this floating tin can? The cubs are near your quarters, Torin. A pause. Then, oh hell. Sarah moved through the station's curved corridors with practiced efficiency, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. The station maintained a standard 0.8 Earth gravity, a compromise between the various species aboard. She found Torin already in the corridor, standing in his rumpled sleep clothes, a worn gray shirt and pants that Sarah had learned humans called pajamas. But what caught her attention was the scene before them. 3 Rithian cubs, their tan and cream fur bristling with effort, were collectively dragging a massive black backpack down the corridor. The bag was easily 3 times their combined size, yet they hauled it with determined little grunts and chirps. Their tiny claws scraped against the floor as they pulled, pushed, and occasionally tumbled over the unwieldy cargo. That's my go bag, Torin said, a note of admiration creeping into his voice. That thing weighs 40 kilograms. Sarah's scales rippled with confusion. 40 kilos? That's more than twice their body weight combined. How are they even moving it? Teamwork? Torin offered, scratching his dark hair. Or pure stubbornness. I'm told those are universal constants. The cubs noticed them and froze, their enormous eyes growing somehow larger. Pip, the smallest with a distinctive spot over one eye, squeaked and tried to hide behind the backpack. Nera and Cole pressed against either side as if forming a defensive perimeter around their prize. Cubs, Sarah said, activating her universal translator to Rithian. You missed morning roll call. What are you doing with human Torin's belongings? Pip peeked out from behind the backpack. Research, she chirped in her high-pitched voice. Teacher said humans are interesting. We're studying human artifacts. Torin crouched down to their level, which Sarah had learned was a human gesture of non-aggression. You could have just asked, you know. I would have shown you. Adults never show us the good stuff, Cole protested, his tail swishing with indignation. They say we're too young, too small, too fragile. Sarah felt a pang of guilt. It was true that most species treated Rithian cubs with excessive caution. They were so small, so delicate-looking. The station's safety protocols required constant supervision, restricted access, and protective barriers throughout the youth sectors. Torin unzipped the backpack, and the cubs' ears perked up with interest. Let's see what treasure you 3 were after. He pulled out items one by one, a multi-tool that made Nera gasp with delight, a water filtration system, emergency rations, a first aid kit, climbing rope, and finally a battered paperback book. This, Torin said, holding up the book, is called The Hobbit. It's about a small person who goes on a big adventure. Everyone thinks he's too small, too comfortable, too ordinary to do anything important. Pip crept closer. What happens? He saves the day. Multiple times. Not because he's big or strong, but because he's clever, brave, and doesn't give up. Sarah watched the exchange with fascination. Humans had only joined the galactic community 3 cycles ago, and they remained enigmatic to most species. They weren't the strongest, fastest, or most technologically advanced. They occupied a strange middle ground in almost every category. Yet here was Torin instinctively understanding what the cubs needed to hear. "The backpack," Sarah said suddenly, understanding dawning. "You keep survival gear in your quarters, why?" Torin shrugged a uniquely human gesture. "Old habit. On Earth, we learn to be prepared. You never know when you might need to bug out quickly." "Bug out?" "Evacuate, escape, survive." He looked at the cubs, then at Sarah. "We're not the biggest or the toughest species out there, so we compensate. We plan, we prepare, we adapt, and we never ever underestimate the small." Pip approached Torin cautiously and placed a tiny paw on his knee.
Can
you teach us? About surviving? About being small but brave?" Sarah expected Torin to defer to proper channels, to suggest approved educational protocols. Instead, he grinned. Another human expression she'd learned indicated genuine pleasure. "Tell you what, every evening after dinner, we'll have survival lessons. I'll teach you what humans learn about preparation, adaptation, and teamwork. But," he held up a finger, "you have to promise to attend all your regular classes and never miss roll call again." 3 small heads nodded vigorously, their ears perking up with excitement. As Sarah escorted the cubs back to their quarters, with Torin's permission to return later for their first lesson, she reflected on what she'd witnessed. Humans didn't coddle the young or dismiss them as too fragile. They recognized potential and nurtured capability. Perhaps that was humanity's true strength. They knew what it meant to be underestimated, to be seen as insignificant in a vast universe. And so they never made that same mistake with others. Her scales shifted to a warm amber. Contentment. "Torin," she said over the comm, "I'm approving an addendum to the youth education program. Emergency preparedness training, human methodology. Instructor you. Copy that, Commander. Though you might regret this when every cub on the station starts building survival shelters in the ventilation shafts." Sarah's scales flickered with amusement. "Let them try. It'll keep them out of trouble." Behind her, 3 small voices chattered excitedly about their upcoming lessons, their earlier heist already becoming legend among the youth sectors. And somewhere in the station's databases, the AI logged an unusual note. "Roll call complete. All cubs accounted for. Human integration exceeding expectations."